All right, so let's see here. I think we're live, everyone. Shalom, everyone. We are the Weekend by Yahuwah Assembly and Yahuwah Almighty, Yahushua Messiah. I have Brother Joshua right next to me, and then below us we have Dennis and Shoshana. And my mom is on the other side of the room here. So we're going to be going into the Torah portion here. I'll be reading it. I'll be reading the Torah portion for you guys, starting with Leviticus 21. So Leviticus 21 to 24. Okay, so Leviticus 21. Let me just get my comparison screen. So let's, whoops, my bad for the background noise here. It's one thing I always got to remember is to exit that out from the background when we go on live. Okay. All right. So just let me know, guys, if it's not sharing the whole screen. Sometimes it only wants to share an app. Okay, so the whole be shared right now. All right, so we're going to go into the compare list. All right, so let's do the LXX. We'll do the ISR, I think, for the Masoretic. Actually, you know what? Nah, we'll go with the usual Septuagint, Targum Onkelos, and Samaritan Pentateuch. All right, there we go. Three-way comparison. Here we go. Leviticus 21 of the priests mourning. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and you shall say to them, they shall not defile themselves in their nation for the dead. So here's the context for the dead. But they may mourn for a relative who is near them, for a father and mother, sons and daughters, for a brother. Okay, so just writing a little note here. This is a chapter talking about commands, how they conduct themselves with dead relatives. Okay. And for a virgin sister that is near to one, that is not espoused to a man, for these one shall defile himself. And what they're referring to is defiling oneself ceremoniously. When you touch a dead body, regardless of a human body, any type of body, in that concept, you are defiling yourself. And possibly it has to do with rotting. I've heard people look into like the Greek word in the Septuagint that is talking about like a body that's already decaying or rotting, possibly. But I do think there's a distinction. Actually, let me correct myself with the animals thing. There is a distinction because you can touch a clean animal that dies of itself. Obviously, you can touch it. It wouldn't be a sin because you're giving that. You can give that of a Gentile, an animal that dies of itself. So there seems to be a distinction. But anyway, verse 4, he shall not defile himself suddenly among his people to profane himself. And again, this is talking about ceremonial uncleanness. Right? And you shall not shave your head for the dead. Of course, the Masoretic text doesn't want to let you know that this is a context of talking about for the dead. It's not saying you can't have a haircut. Okay. With a baldness on the top. So like ritualistic, like bald spots on the head, they would do that for dead bodies. They would do that to mourn for the dead. And they shall not shave their beard. Obviously, the context of that verse is for the dead. Okay. Shall they make gashes on their flesh? Neither shall they make gashes on their flesh. So a lot of people go to this verse and say, see, Doug, you can't shave your beard. No, if you look in the context of the verse, it's talking about for the dead. The whole chapter is talking about doing things for the dead. They shall be set apart to their Elohim. They shall not profane the name of their Elohim, for they offer the sacrifices of Yahuwah. Also, this chapter is talking about Levites. I don't see the phrase sons of Israel ever mentioned in this chapter, just FYI. Okay. As the gifts of their Elohim, for they shall be set apart. So of their marriages, they shall not take a woman who is a harlot and profane, or a woman put away from her husband. Now, key phrase here, this should not say divorce. So if you have a translation that says divorce, it's incorrect. It should, the word there is actually put away in that context. From her husband, for he is set apart to Yahuwah his Elohim. So again, I would think that would be a universal law for all the children of Yashrael, not to take a woman that's already married. I would, that's that obviously Yahushua Matthew 5 says you marry someone that's put away, you commit adultery. So I would assume that's a universal law for all the Israelites, even though Yahuwah doesn't verbatimly state it as a universal law. That should be, I would understand that as not just the Levites, but everyone. But and you shall set him apart, for he offers the gifts of Yahuwah your Elohim, for he shall be set apart. For I, Yahuwah, that sets them apart, am set apart. Okay. All right. Of the priest's daughter convicted of whoredom. And if the daughter of a priest should be profane to go a whoring, she profanes the name of her father, she shall be burnt with fire. Okay, so very, very, very strict punishment for those that are, for the daughters of the Levites, what happens to the daughters of the Levites if they go a whoring, if they commit fornication, they are to be burned with fire. Oof, that's a strict warning there. So now we're talking about the priests, the high priest's set apartness. And the priest that is chief among his brothers, the oil having been poured upon the head of the anointed one. I find it interesting that the Septuagint says the anointed one. I wonder if that's like a little wink to Yahusha there. So I'm gonna make a little physical note there. In Leviticus 21, we're at Leviticus 21, verse 10, for anyone new that's on the medium right now. So, but the Levites in the Septuagint here are called the anointed one, or like specifically the chief priest, which you think about it, Yahusha is our high priest, right? Our chief priest. So it's kind of interesting. Having been, whoops, my bad, guys, went down too far there. Having been set apart to put on the garments, shall not take the mitre, crown, mitre. Actually, no, let me correct myself. No, a mitre would be a turban in this context. This would be talking about the turban that the priest would have off his head, and shall not rend his garments. So talking about rending garments, I would assume for the dead. Neither shall he go into any dead body. Now, this is not talking about necrophilia. This is talking about basically, handling a dead body. Like, Mom, what would be the modern term for this? Pallbearer?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. All right. Neither shall he go into any dead body, neither shall he defile himself for his father or for his mother. Basically, he can't handle the dead body of his father.
No, a pallbearer doesn't handle a dead body, he just handles the coffin.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sis, for correcting me. Yes, I don't even know what the modern term would be that you're handling, because I don't think we do this today, but in Yahuwah's commands, this is very pretty much your relative, you would handle their own body. You wouldn't have someone else handle their body. So this is why Yahuwah is telling the priests they can't do that. All right. So you know what I'm saying, Mom? We don't have this in modern day. When grandma died, you or me were not handling her body specifically. Right. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, so like it's a different culture we're in America.
So Doug, the people that handle all the dead bodies and dress them and clean them up, they're committing an abomination, right?
Well, if the priest handles a dead body, then yes, but this whole chapter is about the Levites. The sons of Yashrael are not even mentioned in this whole chapter so far. So all this.
So I'm talking about non-believers that have a job working at a funeral home. They take care of the dead bodies. They dress them.
No, they're not. No, that's not sin. Because it's saying here, it's talking about the priest or the high priest is saying if he touches the dead body of his mother or his father, that he would be ceremonially unclean and it would not be right for him to be. So basically, sis, to give you the context of this chapter, the whole chapter is about the priest should not defile themselves, meaning it's only for the priest themselves for the dead. So, like, for example, it's completely lawful if your mother or dad dies for you to handle their body and to do a funeral. You'll be ceremonially unclean for 7 days, but it's not a sin. What Yahuwah is dealing with in this chapter, which is a different context, is the high priest specifically, it seems like he's not allowed to even handle his parents' body. Someone else has to do it. Like another Israelite would have to do it, is what it's saying. It's saying he shall not go forth out of the set apart place. He shall not profane the set apart place of his Elohim, because the set apart, and Yahuwah gives a response here in verse 12, because the set apart anointing oil, see, when the priests were ordained for the ministry, they would use like anointing oil, usually olive oil, and it'd be anointed physically, not spiritually, physically, like the oil's on him. So he can't handle a dead body. That's what Yahuwah is trying to say here. And earlier in the chapter with the other Levites, there's certain instances where they can handle a dead body, but it's very specific. So I would recommend to get context, read verses like people that have just joined, read verses 1 all the way to verse 12 to get the context what we're talking about here. So now it's getting to verse 13. His marriage, he shall take for a wife a virgin of his own tribe. So, and this is very clear here, that this is a very specific Levitical command to a specific lineage. Not every Israelite has to do this. I want to stress this because there's certain apocryphal literature that claims so. That's not the case. Okay, right here, Yahuwah is making it very specific. It's the chief priest, if I'm not mistaken, that he's talking to in this context, that he's having Masha command them. And he's saying to the chief priest, he shall take a wife of a virgin of his own tribe. The regular Israelites can marry out of their tribe. Moses could marry out of his own tribe. So it's very key to notice the distinction here. He's talking to the Levites, okay? So, and that's how we know if you're reading an apocryphal book and it says something else, that's how you know it's not scripture. If it's contradicting Yahuwah's own Torah, obviously it's not scripture. So anyway, so just wanted to explain that because I know there's been people out there in the Hebrew Roots movement that say all of us are supposed to adhere to that. No. That's for the chief priest of the Levitical priesthood. Okay. Anyway, sorry for my rant there. Verse 14, but a widow or one that is put away or profaned or a harlot, these he shall not take, meaning not take for a wife, but he shall take for a wife a virgin of his own people. So a virgin of the Levites. Okay, and he shall not profane his seed among his people. I, Yahuwah, sets him apart. The priests that have blemishes. So this, now, mind you, this is not talking about spiritual blemishes. Okay, so what we're about to read about is like physical blemish, like, you know, how an animal has a crushed testicle or this or that. In the same way, if a human chief priest or any Levite has a genetic blemish, any type of blemish, like I think it talks about ears cut off, this, that, they cannot approach the altar. They cannot approach to serve Yahuwah. So he's about to talk about that here in verse 16. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, say to Aaron, a man of your tribe throughout your generations who shall have a blemish on him shall not draw near to offer gifts of his Elohim. No man who has a blemish on him shall draw near. A man blind, lame, with his nose disfigured or his ears cut. A man who has a broken hand or a broken foot. So this is all genetic blemishes here. This is not talking about sin, or humpbacked, or black, or blear-eyed, or that he has lost his eyelashes, or a man who has malignant ulcer or tetter, or one that has lost a testicle. Whoever of the seed of Aaron the priest has a blemish on him shall not draw near to offer sacrifice to your Elohim. So notice how this verse here is clearly saying, so when we see all these other, this, by the way, this gives us the context of what we were talking about a couple weeks ago, the 3 times a year thing and all that. Obviously, regular Israelites are not offering animals on the altar. They bring them into the temple, but who's actually offering them? The Levites. It says it right here. It says it right here. He is not allowed to offer the sacrifices to your Elohim because he has a blemish on him, a physical blemish. He shall not draw near to offer the gifts of Elohim. So every time you see the festival times and all that, you got to take into the previous context of who actually offers the animals on the altar after they're killed, and so on and so forth. Verse 22. The gifts of Elohim, most set apart, he shall eat of the set apart things. So if he's not ceremoniously unclean, if he doesn't have a blemish, or no, actually, let me correct myself. No, if they have a blemish, they can eat of the sacrifices. They just can't offer them, it seems like here. So they can eat of the peace offerings and all that. Verse 23, only he shall not approach the veil. He shall not draw near to the altar because he has a blemish. And he shall not profane the set apart place of his Elohim, for I am Yahuwah that sets them apart. Okay. And Moshe spoke to Aaron and his sons and to all the children of Yasharal. Okay, so that's the rest of that chapter. So again, that chapter in context, you read it from start to end, verse 1 all the way to 24. It's all about the Levites. It's all about the descendants of Aaron. Before we go to the next chapter, I want to let Joshua speak, and I think after he speaks, Mom, you'll take over reading. I just have to take a quick break real quick. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
Can you point out that difference in verse 23? I don't want to turn my AC off.
Shall not approach the veil, nor shall draw near to the altar. He has a blemish that he profane, shall not profane the set apart place of his Elohim, for I am Yahuwah that sets them apart. So it's a little different. I'm not seeing much of a difference. I'm seeing which I wonder if my's even in the text.
No, it's I was pointing to the LXX, the Septuagint says he shall not approach, whereas your Onkelos and your Samaritan say he shall not enter.
Oh wow, okay. That is a huge difference because I would assume they could enter the tabernacle, but yeah, the Septuagint makes a lot more sense, more specific. It's talking about they can't go into the veil, which would be the most set apart place, I would assume. So that's talking about like actually going into the most set apart place and going towards the altar to offer a gift and all that. So yeah, the LXX makes more sense in my opinion. Because the other ones, like you said, would just say do not enter. So it's not really, it's not being that specific. So I mean, or no, actually the LXX is saying go near the veil versus the other version is saying he will not enter. So they don't give a restriction to him being near the veil versus the Septuagint. It seems a little bit stronger that he can't even go near the veil when he has a physical blemish on him. If I'm not mistaken, that's the difference. So yeah. Go ahead, Mom. You can. I'll just need you to read that chapter for me.
All right. Yahuwah said to Moshe, tell Aaron and his sons to treat with respect the sacred offerings the Israelites consecrate to me, so they will not profane my set-apart name. I am Yahuwah. Say to them, for the generations to come, if any of your descendants is ceremonially unclean and yet comes near the sacred offerings that the Israelites consecrate to Yahuwah, that person must be cut off from my presence. I am Yahuwah. If a descendant of Aaron has an infectious skin disease or a bodily discharge, he may not eat the sacred offerings until he is cleansed. He will also be unclean if he touches something defiled by a corpse or by anyone who has an emission of semen, or if he touches any crawling thing that makes him unclean, or any person who makes him unclean. Whatever the uncleanliness may be, the one who touches any such thing will be unclean till evening. He must not eat any of the sacred offerings unless he has bathed himself with water. When the sun goes down, he will be clean. And after that, he may eat the sacred offerings, for they are his food. He must not eat anything found dead or torn by wild animals, and so become unclean through it. I am Yahuwah. The priests are to keep my requirements so that they do not become guilty and die for treating them with contempt. I am Yahuwah who makes them set apart. No one outside a priest's family may eat the sacred offering, nor may the guests of a priest or his hired worker eat it. But if a priest buys a slave with money, or if a slave is born in his household, that slave may eat his food. If a priest's daughter marries anyone other than a priest, she may not eat any of the sacred contributions. But if a priest's daughter becomes a widow or is divorced, yet has no children, and she returns to live in her father's house as in her youth, she may eat of her father's food. No unauthorized person, however, may eat any of it. If anyone eats a sacred offering by mistake, he must make restitution to the priest for the offering and add a fifth of the value to it. The priests must not desecrate the sacred offerings the Israelites present to Yahuwah by allowing them to eat the sacred offerings and so bring upon them guilt requiring payment. I am Yahuwah who makes them set apart. Yahuwah said to Moshe, speak to Aaron and his sons and to all the Israelites and say to them, if any of you, either an Israelite or an alien living in Israel, presents a gift for a burnt offering to Yahuwah, either to fulfill a vow or as a freewill offering, you must present a male without defect from the cattle, sheep, or goats, in order that it may be accepted on your behalf. Do not bring anything with a defect, because it will not be accepted on your behalf. When anyone brings from the herd or flock a fellowship offering to Yahuwah to fulfill a special vow, or as a freewill offering, it must be without defect or blemish to be acceptable. Do not offer to Yahuwah the blind, the injured, or the maimed, or anything with warts or festering or running sores. Do not place any of these on the altar as an offering made to Yahuwah by fire. You may, however, present as a freewill offering a cow or a sheep that is deformed or stunted, but it will not be accepted in fulfillment of a vow. You must not offer to Yahuwah an animal whose testicles are bruised, crushed, torn, or cut. You must not do this in your own land, and you must not accept such animals from the hand of a foreigner and offer them as the food of your Elohim. They will not be accepted on your behalf because they are deformed and have defects. Yahuwah said to Moshe, when a cow, a sheep, or a goat is born, it is to remain with its mother for 7 days. From the 8th day on, it will be accepted as an offering made to Yahuwah by fire. Do not slaughter a cow or a sheep and its young on the same day. When you sacrifice an offering of thanksgiving to Yahuwah, sacrifice it in such a way that it will be accepted on your behalf. It must be eaten that same day. Leave none of it, keep my commands and follow them. I am Yahuwah. Do not profane my set apart name. I must be acknowledged as set apart by the children of Israel. I am Yahuwah, who makes you set apart and who brought you out of Egypt to be your Elohim. I am Yahuwah.
Great job, Mom. You're welcome. Ooh, raspy throat today. Let's see here. Was there much difference here? There was little, I noticed little differences as I was noticing verse 3. It seems like the other versions omit your Elohim in verse 3. Let me just double check that. From what I'm noticing, usually verse 3 will just say in the other versions, I am Yahuwah. Let me see here. Leviticus 22, verse 3. Yeah, so just to make sure it's actually in the Greek, just to double check. Let me just double check this real quick before moving on. Yeah. Okay, so that seems okay. Never mind. That's something maybe Brenton added in there. Okay, so it should just say I am Yahuwah. All right, never mind. Never mind. So I thought there was a difference there, but looks like Brenton might have added in your Elohim part of it, unless I can find it in another source, unless I can find it in a Greek OT plus. Let me just check there maybe. But the ABP plus, which is a version of the Septuagint, doesn't have that phrase in there either. So it could be just a translator bias there. Check this real quick. If it would be there, it would be all the way at the end of the verse. It would be, yeah, it's there actually. So there's a variant between the ABP plus and the Bretons. I would go with Bretons in this case. So you have the theos right there. Ho, he, to, that Greek word sometimes can be used as a possessive verb. In the English, it could be used as his, hers, the, yours. So it is there next. It is there in the Greek. Your, and then Elohim, theos. Okay, so that seems to be missing in the Masoretic of verse 3. You just have I am Yahuwah or I Yahuwah in the Hebrew. So that's a notable difference there. I'll just make a little note of that for future reference. So Masoretic text omits your Elohim. Other than that, Mom, I haven't seen much different from what you were reading.
No,
It pretty much sounds.
Recapping of things.
It pretty much sounds the same thing in every version for most of the chapter. I can't really think of anything else before going to chapter 23. There's a lot of laws about uncleanness here. Bathing his body in water. Now, this is something to keep an eye on. Sometimes the Masoretic text will leave this phrase out. I think in this case it's there, but certain verses in the Torah where it's talking about like bathing your water and you're unclean till evening, sometimes in the Masoretic text they leave out the phrase until evening, which can give you a weird rabbinical understanding where you think you're unclean for like a longer period of time without the until evening, until sunset, kind of like, when am I clean again, So that could be an issue. So just keep an eye out, guys, on that. eventually it does happen where the until evening is omitted. Trying to see, I'm just kind of skimming through here before we go to chapter 23, making sure we didn't miss any huge differences. By the way, meat in the old British English, just want to explain, people will say, well, that's a difference. Meat, not really, because meat is an old British word for food. Meat in our modern English didn't always mean like specifically animal meat, okay, or meat of an animal. When did that even get changed, that definition? When did we start using meat as a term just for animal meat? When did that start changing? Because in the old British, meat just meant food. So when did that happen? Do we know when that happened? Was it the 50s, 40s?
I know that meat is a generic term that like, you could say beef.
Yeah, the King James says meat for plants. So it's not. I don't know when that change happened in the modern English language, but yeah, unfortunately, our modern English language has like bastardized a lot of old English and kind of has changed the meanings of certain words and stuff like that. So just FYI, if you have a 1611 King James or an old British English translation of any version of the Bible, meat just means food. Just so you know, Genesis 1, it shall be meat for you. Okay, so anyway, okay. But again, I don't really see much of a difference here, and let me know if I'm not catching something, but I really don't see much of a difference in this chapter. And Yahuwah, that says apart. You know, so pretty much it's substandard. And again, we already went, guys, if you want to see like a whole study about the differences in the book of Leviticus, we do have a study we already did on the channel. So I don't want to spend too much time on the differences. So you can look on it on the channel, differences in the LXX versus MT studies. You have a whole, you know, playlist where I put all of them, and we did Leviticus is one of our most recent. So we just started the Exodus one last night, so check that out. We did the part 1 last night. So we're gonna move on to Exodus 23 now. Let me just see. Yeah, so Exodus 23. This is the famous chapter, the feast hotspot of the Torah. Leviticus 23. Feasts of Yahuwah, or festivals of Yahuwah, his appointed times, okay? And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Yasharel, and you shall say unto them, feasts of Yahuwah you shall call set apart assemblies. These are my festivals or feasts. Okay. 6 days you shall do work, but on the 7th day is the Sabbath, a rest, a set apart gathering to Yahuwah. You shall not do any work. It is a Sabbath to Yahuwah in all your dwellings. And me and Joshua always joke around about this. This is a universal command. It doesn't matter where you are, all your dwellings. So we can't say this depends on the Levitical priesthood. It does not. It's universal. You can have it in the Melchizedek priesthood. So basically, all your dwellings literally means what it says. All your dwellings, everywhere. You can keep it like that. You can keep the Sabbath as a rest to Yahuwah. Go ahead, Sister Marissa. I see you got your hand up.
Okay, so I have a question. I know a lot of people that are in this movement that say, well, how do we know when is the Sabbath? Especially the people that think that their Sabbath depends on like the 7th day, the 14th day. So, you know, I tell them, okay, in every language, Sabbath is the same, but how do you explain to somebody when they say, how do you know when the Sabbath is, being that we don't know exactly a lot of things pertaining to, you know, how we're supposed to keep certain feasts and stuff like that. So this comes up a lot because I have a friend, I have a friend, and her Sabbath is on a Wednesday. And then the following month it's on a Thursday. So it's like
she's and I don't mean to be facetious, but she's been deceived by a doctrine that I think this is the doctrine that she's following as lunar Sabbath. What happens is they go by the moon when, and I don't know exactly how this belief system came about because you can't find it in the canon. Yahuwah always says sunset to sunset. He never says go by the moon to start your Sabbath. So I think this misunderstanding is a couple of verses. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but it's taken out of context. We're not supposed to use the moon to start a day. The moon doesn't start our days. The moon starts our months. So there is a distinction. Yahuwah makes in his Torah that in Psalms, he says he made them for the appointed times, not referring to the Sabbath, but referring to his feast days. That's the purpose of the moon. He did not make the moon to start a day. So what I would tell your friend is, as kindly as I could, I would tell her that if you go to, we're going to get to it at this point of the chapter. We haven't gotten to it yet, but verse, I think it's 32 in the Septuagint even literally says from evening to evening, you keep your Sabbaths. The Sabbath can never be in the middle of the week. It can never, first of all, whenever your Sabbath is, whenever Yahuwah's Sabbath is, it should never change. It's fixed. It can't be one day. It can't be the middle of the week and then the end of the week the next week. No, Yahuwah says he has 1 7th day. The 7th day is the same from week to week. And I would just show her too from history. The Sabbath day never physically changed. It's a historical fact that what we call Saturday, get rid of all the paganism nonsense, whatever it's called Saturday, whatever. You get rid of that and just look at the historical facts that day has never physically changed. That's always been the 7th day of the week. It's never changed. A lot of people like to quote Daniel 7 in that prophecy, but they don't read the whole verse in context. It says he would attempt to change times and law. It doesn't say that he would succeed to change times and law. It says he would try to change times and law. I think that's even in King James, right, Mom? That's how it's worded in Daniel 7. He would try to change times and law. So any version of Daniel 7 will say that. So the context of that is that this beast character would try to do. It's not that he would succeed. So a lot of people like to point to that, but if you read it in context, it's not saying he succeeded. It's not saying that the Sabbath ever changed. The Sabbath has always changed, like you pointed out, Sister Marissa. In every language, it's the same word. What Hispanics call Saturday, Sabado, Sabbath. What Greeks call it, Sabbaton, Sabbath. Every language has the same word. Now, as far as, like I said, I think the harder problem is helping people understand that this whole lunar Sabbath is not biblical. Going by the moon to tell the Sabbath is nowhere found in Scripture. And really it's a misunderstanding of Genesis 1, I think 1:14 to 1:16. It's this idea that we're supposed to use every luminary for every part of the calendar. That's not what it's saying in that verse. It's saying in that verse that for days you have one luminary, for months you have another luminary, for years you have another luminary. That's how I believe that verse should be interpreted, because I believe the stars, the Malachim, the angels, tell the years, maybe prophetically. In some way, shape, or form. There was a way that Yahuwah gave the constellations for some purpose. Now, I'm not saying divination, so please don't mince my words. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there was some purpose with the Malachim for years, and there's a purpose for the sun with the start of a day to an end of a day system. You can see that every time we're clean, we're unclean till sunset, till a day starts at sunset, a day ends at sunset. Yahuwah he's not trying to make it hard for us. Yahuwah repeats himself a lot in Scripture. Whenever you see that repeated, that should be like a light bulb moment, because that should be like, oh wow, okay, so wait a minute, so I'm clean at sunset. Why am I clean at sunset? Because it's the start of a new day, a new yom. Okay, why am I unclean till sunset? Because you got to wait until this. You got to wait until the end of that day that you're unclean on, if that makes any sense. So constantly, Yahuwah is repeating himself. Constantly, and we're going to get to it in this chapter as I continue Leviticus 23 here. We're going to get to the verse I'm talking about where verbatimly Yahuwah says for all your Sabbaths, evening to evening. He does not say just on the Day of Atonement. I know a lot of people have misinterpreted it that way, but that's not what Leviticus 23:32 means in from evening to evening you keep your Sabbath. He's talking about weekly Sabbaths as well. So just bear with me. I'm going to get to that point of the chapter. So anyway, here we go. Verse 4. These the feasts to Yahuwah set apart gatherings you shall call in their appointed times or seasons. The word seasons there is moed, appointed times. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between sunsets, evening, is Yahuwah's Passover. And if people are saying, how do you know evening's sunset, Doug? Because certain Bibles will say twilight. Targum Unkelos, thank you very much. Between the suns, thank you very much. Twilight is not evening, and that's my pet peeve with certain modern Bibles. I really, I don't want to get on a tangent, but I really hate that. I really hate how they want to modernize scriptural terminology, and they try to secularize it. Twilight is not sunset. It's not evening. Okay. Anyway, verse 6. And on the 15th day of this month is the feast of unleavened bread to Yahuwah. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. And on the first day shall be called a set apart gathering to you. You shall do no servile work. Okay, so no servile work. So basically, it's a certain type of work you're not supposed to do on that day. And you shall offer whole burnt offerings to Yahuwah 7 days. And by the way, we went over this in Leviticus 21 in the context of offering the whole burnt offerings. The regular people are not doing that. They're bringing the animals to the tabernacle of witness. Originally, they would kill them outside the door of the tabernacle of witness, and they would bring the dead animal into the priest for the priest to physically offer it on the altar. So that's the context of that. You shall offer whole burnt offerings to Yahuwah 7 days, and the 7 days shall be a set apart gathering to you. You shall do no servile work. Okay, so the word servile work. Now, what's the difference here? Some translations say no laborious work of any kind. Yeah, they're kind of improvising a little bit there. That's and I think that might be a Masoretic text thing, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong. Could be a translation error. Yeah, so just to explain, Sister Marissa, twilight is, from my understanding, is the time period between sunset and complete darkness. That's twilight. So obviously, if evening is talking about between the sunsets, that twilight cannot be evening. So twilight would be actually the difference between the beginning of the evening hours of the 12 hours of the night hours. So basically, like sunset is the beginning of the night hours, right? So when evening starts. Then you have twilight in the middle between that and complete darkness. So that's what twilight actually is. So just to explain why I don't believe twilight is a correct definition for evening. Okay. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe saying, verse 9 here in Leviticus 23, verse 10, speak to the children of Yashrael, and you shall say to them, when you shall have entered into the land which I give you. Okay, remember, guys, he did not give us the land of America. Okay, this is a clear, distinct context here. This is a specific land he's talking about. Okay, all right. Now let me see here. Okay, all right. So speak to the children of Yasharal, and you shall say to them, when you shall enter into the land which I give you, and reap the harvest of it. What's the it? The land he's bringing them into. Then you shall bring a sheaf, first fruits of your harvest, to the priest. So there's multiple reasons why we can't do that today. Number one, we're not in the land he's going to give us eventually. Number two, there's no Levitical priesthood or priests. Those are two main big reasons we can't do verse 10 today. And he shall lift up the sheep before Yahuwah to be accepted for you. On the day after the first day, the priest shall lift it up. Major difference and problem here that the Masoretic text changes. They're either changing it or they're making it generalized by putting Sabbath there. Major confusion in the Hebraic roots movement right now because of the way Masoretic text words this, the Sabbath. Which Sabbath? There's 2 Sabbaths in that week. So, I mean, this is talking about, you know, the wave offering here. So a lot of people get confused and start counting on the weekly Sabbath that follows that first Sabbath of that week, because the first Sabbath of that week is the first day of unleavened bread. So if you start counting on the weekly Sabbath, which is a couple days after, or sometimes even, you know, depending on, you know, I know everyone has different times that they're keeping the feast, but usually in that week, sometimes there's even a couple days in between the high Sabbath and the weekly Sabbath. So you would be, you know, a couple days off if you're waiting for the weekly Sabbath to start your count. Go ahead, Mom.
What is meant by a wave?
Wave offering, like the priests, what they would do, Mom, is they would take the loaf, they would like physically wave it.
Oh,
It would signify what Yahusha, spiritually it connects to what Yahusha did for us. A lot of the sacrifices in a spiritual way connect to him.
right.
And the wave
right.
offering is like our acceptance. Sometimes in your Masoretic text, it will say acceptance offering. So it's our acceptance to Yahuwah. You know, and if I'm not mistaken, animals are part of the offering too. If I'm not mistaken, you bring a lamb, and I think we're about to get to that part. So it says on the morrow, the first day. What is the LXX talking about the first day though? After the first day of the week of unleavened bread. That's what the LXX is giving you the exact context. On the 16th of Abib, you start your count, not the day after the weekly Sabbath. By the way, almost every other version of this verse agrees with the Septuagint rendering, just by the way. The Masoretic is the only one that just says Sabbath, okay? You know, literally unkalos right here. After the day of the festival. What would be the first festival day of that week? The 15th. Okay, so again, there's 2 targums that actually agree with the Septuagint. The unkalos, both unkalos and Pseudo-Jonathan worded similar, agree that it's after the first day should be the way it's worded, just FYI. Okay. And you shall offer on the day on which you bring the sheep a lamb without blemish of a year old for a whole burnt offering to Yahuwah. So the lamb's a whole burnt offering being offered here. And it's grain offering 2/10 portions of fine flour mingled with oil, for is the sacrifice to Yahuwah, a smell of sweet savor to Yahuwah, and its drink offering the 4th part of a hin of wine. And you shall not eat bread or new parched grain until this same day, until you offer the sacrifices to your Elohim. And Brother Joshua pointed this out. With the context of the Septuagint, verse 14 makes perfect sense. With the Masoretic text, the way it's worded, it'd be like, you're not eating any new grain for a couple of days. You're already in the land a couple of days, and you're waiting until the weekly Sabbath to do that. I don't know. To me, it doesn't make much sense, in my opinion. So if you're doing it on the 16th, it's pretty much you're doing this right as you're, you know, almost right after you're getting into the land practically. Because remember, they left on the 15th, right? They left Egypt on the 15th. So just saying chronologically, to me, it makes a little bit more sense. So it says, you shall not eat bread or new parched grain until this same day, until you offer the sacrifices to your Elohim, a perpetual statute throughout your generations, all you're doing. So basically, whatever bread they brought with them, that's old grain that was grown beforehand, right? It's already reaped. They got to eat that and be subsided with that until that 16th day, when they can offer the offering before they eat the new parched grain. That's what it's saying in context. So it says a perpetual statute throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Okay. The Feast of Pentecost You shall number to yourselves from the day after the Sabbath, from the day on which you shall offer the sheaf of the heave offering 7 full weeks. I like how the ankelos here is a little bit more specific than the LXXE. Says, count you after the, count you after the festival day, from the day that you brought the omer, the elevation, 7 weeks complete shall they be. Okay. Until the morrow, meaning until the next day, after the last week, you shall number 50 days. Now, this is a lot of confusion in this movement right now. You are not counting grain. You are counting 50 days from the 16th of Abib to Pentecost. Okay, this is the most confusing thing out here, because you see it on social media, counting Omer. Yahuwah never says to count the Omer. He never says counting the grain. He never says that. That is a rabbinical tradition. I'm trying to be nice about this and as gentle about this as possible, but it's a rabbinical tradition to count the grain for 50 days. Nowhere does it say to do that. It says to count literally 50 days to Pentecost. Okay. And shall bring a new grain offering to Yahuwah. Yeah, the 7th Sabbath says, but what you got to understand is they're counting the day that they're counting as the count. So 7, also the word Sabbath, Sister Sadia brought up a good point, just to clear up some confusion here. If you count 7 Sabbaths, right, that's pretty much 49 days, right? So, but you're also counting as part of that count the 50th day. So it says count 7 Sabbaths, and literally the day after the 7th Sabbath would be the 50th day, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, thank you, sis. Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to explain. So it's not 49 days; it's a full 50 days. So I know the wording kind of gets weird in these versions, in these modern versions of the Torah. Or sometimes in the English, these translators don't make it that clear. Okay, so it says, shall number 50 days, almost, I think every version in verse 16 says 50 days also. Shall bring a new grain offering to Yahuwah. By the way, meat, again, does not mean animal. Okay, grain offering, minka in the Aramaic. To Yahuwah, you shall bring from your dwelling loaves as a heave offering 2 loaves. They shall be of 2/10 portions of fine flour. They shall be baked with leaven of the first fruits to Yahuwah, and you shall bring with loaves even 7 unblemished lambs. Remember how we were talking about the blemish, physical blemish in earlier chapters, of a year old, and 1 calf of the herd, 2 rams without blemish. They shall be a whole burnt offering to Yahuwah. And just FYI, for those that don't know, a whole burnt offering is like, you don't eat that. That would be a ascended offering. That would be wholly consumed by fire. Just put it in layman's terms what it means. And their grain offerings and their drink offerings, a sacrifice to smell a sweet savor to Yahuwah. Okay, go ahead, Mom. You had your hand up. Oh, you didn't have your hand up?
No.
Okay, all right. Maybe I'm seeing things. All right. And they shall sacrifice 1 kid of the goats. Now, this is interesting. Why the Masoretic doesn't tell you that it's a kid of the goats, I really don't understand that. But for a sin offering, and 2 lambs of a year old for a peace offering with loaves of the first fruits. So interestingly, the other versions will say peace offerings, which I think a peace offering is a little different than a first fruit offering, isn't that? Aren't they 2 different types of offerings? That's a little weird, because a peace offering is an animal. First fruits would be fruits of the ground. That would be, I mean, you could say firstlings of your flock is technically a first fruit offering. I mean, technically, but I think in this context, it's talking about a grain offering, if I'm not mistaken, because it's talking about the 1 baby goat, kid of the goats, as a sin offering, 2 lambs as a peace offering. And I understand the Greek probably more correctly says deliverance offering. get that. But then it says, after that, it says a separate offering of loaves. So the fact that it says loaves, unless I'm missing something, I don't think there's a grain offering that's called a peace offering. I don't know. Go ahead, Brother Joshua. I think you got your hand up. Oh, no? Okay. So I don't know. To me, that's a little confusing. I don't know. That's just a little pet peeve of mine that, anyway, so I'm going to make a little mental note of that. They leave out the word kid, which is weird too. So I guess they think it's okay to any type of goat to offer. I don't know. Kind of reminds me of the book of Malachi, in my opinion. Yep, baby goat, sis, baby goat. Yep, that's what a kid means. That's why I don't like to call human children kids, in my opinion. That's a whole nother topic. But we make that. Oh, that's funny. And the priest shall place them with the loaves of the first fruits and offering before Yahuwah with 2 lambs. They shall be set apart to Yahuwah. They shall belong to the priest that brings them. Huh. Yeah, a little difference in wording there. They shall be set apart before the priest. I kind of like how the Septuagint says belongs to the priest. Because, the priests are able to eat of the sacrifices and all that. So, anyway. And you shall call this Yom, this day, a set-apart gathering. It shall be set apart to you. You shall do no servile work on it. It is a perpetual ordinance throughout your generations and all your habitations. Okay. All right. Gleanings to be left for the poor. And when you shall reap the harvest of your land, you shall not fully reap the remainder of the harvest of your field. Again, talking about the land of Canaan here. Your field, when you reap, and you shall not gather that which falls from your reaping. You shall leave it for the poor and the stranger. I am Yahuwah. Okay. The Feast of Trumpets, and Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Yashrael, saying, in the 7th month, on the 1st Yom of the month, you shall have a rest, a memorial of trumpets. It shall be to you a set-apart gathering. So this is talking about blowing the silver trumpets. You shall do no servile work. You shall offer a whole burnt offering to Yahuwah. So now we're going to the Day of Atonement here. The Yom of Atonement. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, and on the 10th day of the 7th month is a Yom of Atonement. It shall be to you a set-apart gathering. You shall humble your spirits, or I guess in the Hebrew, it would be ruachim, that the Septuagint is translating from here, to offer a whole burnt offering to Yahuwah. The reason I know it's spirits and not souls is the original Greek word that Brenton's translating from is suke, spirit. It's talking about humbling your spirit, which obviously is repentance. Obviously, when you look all over Scripture, the whole counsel of Scripture, what humbling your nefesh or spirit is, it's, humbling yourself before your king, being down low and brought low. Okay. So, and then it says, you shall offer a whole burnt offering to Yahuwah. Okay. You shall do no work on this self same day, for this is a day of atonement for you, to make atonement for you before Yahuwah your Elohim. And again, this points to Yahusha. Again, he's the atonement of our being. Okay. Every spirit or a ruach that shall not be humbled in that day shall be cut off from among its people. So this is talking about anyone that's not humbled in that day shall be cut off. And then it's going to talk about if you don't keep it as a Sabbath, you'll be cut off too. And every ruach which shall not do work on that day, that ruach shall be destroyed from among his people. You shall do no manner of work. It is a perpetual statute throughout your generations in all your habitations. Now, here's the key phrase here for people that are still on the fence about, how to keep the Sabbath here, okay? it shall be a set apart Sabbath to you, and you shall humble your ruachim or spirits from the 9th day of the month, from evening to evening, you shall keep your Sabbaths, plural. Okay. All right. The feet. Oh, go ahead. My bad, Brother Joshua. Go ahead.
I mean, I definitely agree with the meaning of what it means to afflict your spirit. But as far as that word supposed to be spirit and not soul, I'm not 100% sure on that, because you have the other word, you said it's suke. However, you have that other word pneuma, which also means spirit, and it doesn't seem to have any meaning of soul, whereas suke seems to both mean spirit and soul. So I'm
Yeah.
as to pneuma and
Where the
suke.
confusion comes in is that the Greeks versus the Hebrews they believe that your soul and your spirit is the same thing, unfortunately. So they have a misunderstanding of the separation of soul and spirit. So that could be possibly why suke means both. So I would agree with you, it probably does mean both. But you can find
Apparently, I take that back. Pneuma also seems to mean both as well. So
yeah, it's their Greek mythology. They and this is kind of how Christianity, I'm glad you brought this up. This is how Christianity misunderstands the concept that a soul is not a spirit. They confuse the two. It's not the same thing. Like, to have a soul, you need a spirit and a body. So obviously it's not the same thing. So what happens with the Greeks and Greek mythology is they kind of mix the two. They kind of confuse it, as they don't make a differentiation. It's one and the same in their religion. So what happens is, I guess, for the translators of the Septuagint, they kind of were dealing with a pagan culture, so they kind of had to meet them halfway in a way. So they're translating it for them to understand what they're talking about. To me, it's not that big of a deal, because I can look at the word nefesh, and nefesh doesn't always mean appetite. So to me, it's not a big deal. Either way, it's talking about humbling yourself. That's the specific action Yahuwah is telling us to do, to humble ourselves before him. So
yeah, so it's not a big deal. I would just really like to
No.
know which one is which, like pneuma,
Yeah.
suke. But I guess there's really no
in
way
their
of knowing.
culture, yeah, I would agree with you. It's a little confusing. I think it's because their culture doesn't make a differentiation between the two, unfortunately. Their religion doesn't. The Greek pantheon would confuse Gehenna with Sheol. They combine the two in their religion. There's a lot of stuff in Greek mythology that kind of conflicts with scripture because of their mindset. The Greco-Roman mindset is, and you see this in the Christian church, they confuse hell for Gehenna. They think it's the same thing. So that's where they're getting it from, is Greek mythology. Greek mythology, there's like, it's almost like an amalgamation of two places, because they don't make any differentiation. And that's where we get the idea that when people that don't believe die, they go straight to the lake of fire. That's from Greek mythology, by the way, just FYI. That's not biblical. So that idea that you either go straight up to heaven or straight down to the lake of fire, that is pretty much Greek mythology. Just FYI. So again, they don't make differentiation of things that are different in their religion. So that poses a problem when we're looking at the Septuagint. We got to take into consideration the Hebrew is being translated into Greek. So there's going to be a little bit differences of thought process. So we got to kind of like, show a little mercy to, what these guys were trying to do by translating the Paleo Hebrew scriptures into Greek. They had to meet these Greek people where they were to help them understand what Yahuwah's word says, and all that. But I would agree with you. There should be a word in Greek straight for ruach, and there should be a Greek word that specifically means soul or nefesh. I would agree with you. It's very confusing, but either way. So verse 33, And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Yasharel, saying, on the 15th day of this 7th month, there shall be a feast of tabernacles 7 days to Yahuwah. And on the first day shall be a set apart gathering. You shall do no servile work. 7 days you shall offer whole burnt offerings to Yahuwah. And the 8th day shall be a set apart gathering to you. You shall offer whole burnt offerings to him. It is a time of release. Now, this is talking about the Jubilee year here, if I'm not mistaken. You shall do no servile work. Okay. These, the feasts or appointed times, which you shall call set apart gatherings to offer burnt offerings to Yahuwah, whole burnt offerings and their grain offerings and their drink offerings for each day on its day. Besides the Sabbaths of Yahuwah, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vows, and besides your free will offerings, which you shall give to Yahuwah, and on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you shall have completely gathered in the fruits of the earth, you shall keep a feast to Yahuwah 7 days. On the first day there shall be a rest, and on the 8th day a rest. It's interesting to note this is the only week-long feast that Yahuwah feels the need to spell it out for us, that the first and last days are Sabbaths, which is kind of interesting. And on the first Yom, you shall take two leaf fruit of the trees, branches of palm trees, thick boughs of trees, willows, and branches of osiers. I wonder what an osier is. From the brook to rejoice before Yahuwah, your Elohim, 7 days in the year. So they're like waving the the tradition, even in Judaism, is that they would take these different branches of different trees and they would actually praise Yahuwah. They would wave before him. So that's kind of interesting. A perpetual statute for your generations. In the 7th month you shall keep it. 7 days you shall dwell in tabernacles, or temporary dwellings, I think some translations would say, bowers, booths, etc. That your posterity may see that I made the children of Yasharel to dwell in tents when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I, Yahuwah, your Elohim. Okay. And Moshe recounted the feasts of Yahuwah to the children of Yasharel. So I kind of like how the Unkelos here says taught them to the sons of Yasharel. So I kind of like that. Orange citron tree, yeah, that is pretty interesting. Maybe they have a better idea. I would like to look into that historically. What would have been what's the correct type of tree that they're talking about there? I do know sometimes they modernize it to fit the whoever they're translating it for. So whoever the audience is, sometimes they modernize it. So myrtles is obviously a more modern type of tree that we know about. Willows, citron tree. Now, so what's interesting is citron is in a parentheses, so it should just say orange tree, because citron's in parentheses there. So that's interesting. That's just something I want to look into. But yeah. Anyway, so now we're going to be starting Leviticus 24, which is the last chapter of our Torah portion here. Let's see, the oil for the lamps. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, charge the children of Yasharel and let them take for you pure olive oil beaten for the light to burn a lamp continually. Outside the veil in the tabernacle witness, Aaron and his sons, key phrase here, guys, for who's supposed to be lighting the menorah. Aaron and his sons shall burn it from evening until morning before Yahuwah continually, a perpetual statute throughout your generations. So this is talking about the actual, big menorah that was in the temple. They're the ones to be lighting it. They're the ones to be burning it.
Are the priests living at the tabernacle? I mean, are they living there?
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much,
Pretty
right?
much.
Yeah.
Because that kind of foreshadows to the second temple time period where they also pretty much lived in that vicinity too. I don't know if they lived physically in the temple per se, but they lived in that general area. They also had, suburbs that Yahuwah gave them when they came into the land of Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
But for certain specifics, sometimes, Mom, yeah, they would be there for an extended period of time. Like we read earlier about the oil, the anointing when it's on them.
Yeah.
They had to be there for a whole
They
week.
had to be there from
So-
the morning.
So now for this is a little different. It's talking about the menorah. They had to be there evening till morning, continually burning that lampstand. So obviously they spent a decent amount of time in the set apart place. You could say, you shall burn the lamps on the pure lampstands before Yahuwah till the next day. The showbread, and you shall take fine flour and make it of 12 loaves. Each loaf shall be of 2/10 parts. You shall put them in the 2 rows, each row, 6 rows on the pure table before Yahuwah. So this is talking about now the table of showbread here. Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm in the right chapter because this reminds me of a chapter in Exodus. Yeah. So you shall put on a robe pure frankincense, salt. Someone's omitting the salt here. Mom, does your version not have salt? No salt, huh? Oh boy. Mazerites.
It's all right, I'd be adding it in anyway.
Mazerites. Frankincense and salt, and shall be for loaves for memorial set before Yahuwah. On the Sabbath day, they shall set forth before Yahuwah continually before the children of Yashar for an eternal covenant. Okay, they shall be set for Aaron and his sons, and they shall eat them in the set apart place, for this is their most set apart portion of the offerings made to Yahuwah, a perpetual statute. Okay, Shelomoth's or Shalumit's son blasphemes, and there went forth of a Israelite woman, and he was a son of the Egyptian man among the sons of Yashar. Now this debunks modern Jewish culture. Because don't they say, Mom, unless his dad's Hebrew? Yeah. Okay. Yahuwah is considering the son of an Egyptian man and a Hebrew woman a Hebrew. Interesting. Kind of parallels actually with who was that, Mom, in the New Covenant? Timothy? He had a Greek dad?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. And they fought in the camp, and the son of the Israelite woman and a man who was an Israelite. And the son of the Israelite woman, now this is a mistranslation here, just FYI, those that have LXX here. The English, it's mistranslated in English. It should say, the son of the Israelite woman who profaned the name or cursed the name. Because even says right after it says, and cursed. And they brought him to Masha, and his mother's name was Salumith, the daughter of Dabri of the tribe of Dan. And they put him inward to rightly rule him by the command of Yahuwah. Or I like how it says here, by the decree of the word of Yahuwah. Kind of like it. Gives more idea that the word of Yahuwah is a person there. So that's Leviticus. What is it, 24, verse 12? Targum Uncles. Verse 13, the law of blasphemy. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, bring forth him that cursed outside the camp. And all who heard shall lay their hands upon his head, and all the congregations shall stone him. And speak to the sons of Yashrael, and you shall say to them, whosoever shall curse Elohim shall bear his sin. And he that curses or profanes, I'm doing my best to improvise here with this mistranslation of that word here. And he that curses the name of Yahuwah, let him die the death. Let all the congregation of Yashrael stone him with stones, whether he be native, stranger, or a native. Let him die for cursing the name of Yahuwah. Because obviously naming the name of Yahuwah is not cursing him. So that would be a rabbinic tradition. That would be something that the Talmud would try to say.
But this is why they're afraid, right? This is basically
Cursed, yeah.
the passage that they're
Yeah.
afraid of doing that. Yeah.
Well, no. They're afraid. Yahuwah's saying, let them be afraid if they ever curse my name. Because the boy just got stoned for cursing his name.
Mhm.
So it's not mom, they're afraid of themselves. He's commanding them to be afraid. He says they should fear me. That's the context. But the English translators sometimes will say, let him not name the name. It's a stupid rabbinic tradition. Stupid. Verse 17, and whosoever shall smite a man and he die, let him die the death. And now this is talking about damage. And whosoever shall smite a beast and it shall die, let him render life for life. Whoever shall inflict a blemish on his neighbor as he has done to him, so shall be done to himself in return. Bruise for bruise, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Anyone may inflict a blemish, physical blemish, on a man, so shall it be rendered to him. So that's the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth verse that gets so misused in modern culture. It doesn't even take into consider the context. Whosoever shall smite a man and shall die, let him die the death. So the same exact death someone puts on a man unrighteously, they're deserving that same death. That's what Yahuwah means by that. There shall be one right ruling for the stranger and the native. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. The blasphemer is stoned. And Masha spoke to the children of Yashrael, and they brought him that cursed out of the camp and stoned him with stones. And the children of Yashrael did as Yahuwah commanded Masha. So I know a lot of the Christian tradition is, oh, Yahuwah didn't command stoning, Masha did. No. Yahuwah is the one commanding Masha to do this.
Yeah.
So it's wrong for us to say this is something Masha told them to do, or that it came from Moses, because I've heard family members of mine in the past try to claim that this is not a command of the Father, it's a command of Moses. No, it's not. It's literally coming from the Father. The Father's handing it down to Moses to give to the people. So just to simplify for new viewers and listeners, the law of Moses was given by the mouth of Yahuwah. Moses didn't just make this stuff up, just FYI. Okay, so every command that's in the law of Moses, all, the quote unquote 613, all of that was given from Yahuwah to Moses. As far as the commands we know from scripture, we can find, of the 613 commands, I'm pretty sure the rabbis add some commands and all that, but for the ones that are actually in the 613 that were given by Yahuwah, you can find them literally given by Yahuwah to Moses. So anyway, go ahead, Brother Joshua.
The fact that you have someone being stoned for blaspheming the name of Yahuwah, that debunks you have the way that the KJV translates, you shall speak, you shall be forgiven for speaking the word against the Son of Man, but no one shall be forgiven for speaking a word against the set apart Ruach. Definitely a mistranslation there. Either that or it's a misunderstanding on the part of Christianity. Because I know there's a lot of people that teach that you can speak a word against the Messiah, you can speak a word against the Father, but you can't speak a word against the set apart Ruach, which is obviously false because this guy just got stoned for blaspheming Yahuwah.
Yeah, I wonder if it's actually linking back to this, even that he's talking about, if you curse me, if you curse the Almighty, you're not going to be forgiven. Like if you and I think that's what Yahushua was trying to warn the Pharisees about, because the Pharisees were trying to say, right, in the context of that chapter, he does things by Satan. So they're changing the character of Yahuwah's Ruach, that Yahuwah would be evil. You're changing his character. You're cursing him in a way. spiritually. You're cursing them in a way because you're trying to make, you know, they were trying to make Yahusha one with Satan by saying that. So you're actually cursing them by saying that. And I think that's, I don't know, that's kind of my thinking on it when connecting it to Leviticus 24, which we just read, how a son of a, what was it, Mama? A Egyptian man, an Israelite woman, how he cursed his name. His name is who he is. So if you look at the scriptural definition of a name, it's not just its pronunciation of his name. It's who he is, his character. So you curse his character, you make him something he's not. You know, just saying. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
Also, this definitely points to the same type of behavior that the Pharisees had, because this is a guy that would have seen Yahuwah's working in Mitzrayim. He would have seen everything that happened all the way up until the point that they came out of Mitzrayim. He would have been in the wilderness with them for a little while. So he had no excuse not to know. He definitely knew the character of Yahuwah. So he was without excuse. In the same way, you see the Pharisees, they're seeing the working of Yahusha. They're seeing him do miracles. They're seeing him teach Torah correctly. So they were without excuse. In that very same way, if that makes sense. They weren't just, they knew what they were saying, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. It was kind of willful sin in a way, because they were being stubborn. They didn't want to accept what they thought of the Messiah is incorrect. And he kept telling them, you error not knowing the scriptures, you error not knowing the scriptures. Tons and tons of times again, he says, you do not know the scriptures. And they would hold on to their rabbinical understanding until they were blue in the face. So it's kind of the same way. We don't know much about this son of a this half Israelite, half Gentile guy that got stoned. All we really know is that he was cursing Yahuwah's character, his name in general, he cursing even in probably his using Yahuwah's name in the wrong way, probably. Maybe he was making a false, swearing falsely by it, possibly. There's many, isn't there's a stoning for people that swear by Yahuwah's name falsely? Isn't there like a punishment for that? I would have to look that up. Yeah. So there's many reasons why that grown-up son was stoned. Anyway, so all right, so let's see. I think we got the prophets portion coming up. So we'll have a new reader for Ezekiel 44, 15 and 31. So that was Leviticus 21 and 24. Please stay tuned, everyone. We will be doing Ezekiel 44, 15 and 31 soon.